one way where people register. Another new concept which is there is one person company. Now, even though one person company is being popular and it's being shown as if it will really help startups, but I don't see one person company really for a startup. The reason being is that there are various restrictions for one person company. It can be best substitute for a sole proprietorship when someone is starting and he doesn't want to have unlimited liability when he wants to do a business, so he can use OPC to register, because every startup wants to grow and there is a restriction when you have OPC. For example, you cannot have your paid up capital of more than 50 lakh rupees in a OPC. So once you cross that threshold, you need to convert that into a normal private limited. Or for example, your average turnover in 3 years cannot be more than 3 CR. So, and there is a cost associated when you convert into a private limited company from an OPC. So, what we feel as of now, even though this is not started in practical sense, this will start only from 1st of May. We are not able to register OPC still. They have just extended the notification. So, OPC is best for sole proprietorships who have registered as a sole proprietor and they don't want their liability to be unlimited. Another myth which I feel about OPC, because I want to start with OPC because there is huge buzz about OPC. OPC still needs 2% to register. It doesn't need 1% to register. The reason is...
But it still says it's 1%.
No, the reason is it has a nominee clause. So you need to have one nominee with you. So still, even though there is only one shareholder, but there has to be one nominee, and that nominee needs to sign everywhere, because God forbid if there is some issue with the main shareholder, the shareholding needs to be transferred to the nominee. So technically you still cannot register with just one person. So let's start with private limited company. I mean, when you go for an entity selection, what are the points which you have in your mind? You have a product startup, or if you want to have a product startup, or you want to have a digital marketing company, you want to, what are the factors you have when you want to start while registering an entity?
As a startup, it would be low cost initially.
Yeah.
Fast, proper shareholding, group of people starting.
Less liabilities.
See, we first of all, let's not discuss about sole proprietorship, because it's we do not encourage people registering sole proprietorship for obvious reasons. Let's first compare between LLP and a private limited company.
LLP is limited liability
partnership. It's basically a partnership which has got limited liability with respect to the liability of their partners. So,
Can you just elaborate?
so LLP is also a new concept, relatively new concept, which was brought in 2011-12, wherein you can have all the flexibility of a partnership firm, a normal partnership firm, but with the benefit of liability being limited. So your liability, if you are a partner of an LLP and you have an investment of 1 CR, your liability will be restricted to 1 CR. In a sole proprietorship, when we say your liability is unlimited, that means that if there is a liability on your business, that can even attach your personal FDs, personal assets, anything. In a normal erstwhile partnership firm, the liability of the partner is unlimited. So they brought in this new concept, it's called LLP. In US it's LLC. So the main difference is between, for a startup, the main thing is when should you register as an LLP or a private limited company. That's the main thing, because I still don't think that OPC is still for a startup, because there are so many restrictions. It doesn't make sense to go for a OPC. And the cost wise also, starting cost for a OPC and private limited company, it's not much of a difference. I think it's 3,000 to 4,000 is at max.
Regarding the LLP, between LLP and traditional partnership firms, the only difference is the limited liability.
Limited liability, and it has got registered with Ministry of Corporate Affairs, so it will have pan-India acceptability because it's registered with the central government. Normal partnerships are not registered, so there is no compulsion to register them. You can register them with Societies Act, with the respective state Society Act. Since suppose you have a partnership firm which is registered in West Bengal, now it will not have same kind of applicability in Karnataka or in NCT because it's not registered with their state government. But for NLP, since it's registered with MCA, so it's better than a normal partnership firm. So when we say there are 4 factors when we decide between a LLP and a private limited company, the first factor is objectivity of the founder. What you actually want to do with your business. Do you really want to scale up? Scale up to a stage where you can bring in investment from outside. You can give ESOPs. You can bring in people as directors, as on key roles. You can actually get financed by financial institutions. If those kind of things is with you, and if you want to scale up to that extent, then you should register a private limited company. The reason being is that the main difference between LLP and private limited company is, in an LLP there is no segregation between ownership and management. The partners are the owners and they are actually manage the business. Even though in a private limited company also, since we have common shareholders and directors when we start up, so practically there is no difference between shareholder and director, but it has got the flexibility where you can bring in people from outside. You have VC funding, you have angel funding, so you can bring in people and you can appoint someone. They want you to appoint someone from their board of directors as independent directors and all those things. In an LLP you cannot do that. I have not seen a single LLP being invested by anyone, because everyone would need equity share or debentures or convertible debentures which are not there in an LLP.
But if you get a stake in it's still not the same. So, like, I don't know, in my head it was that if somebody is coming in and he's funding part of the company, then in an LLP, which is like a partnership, you just give him, if you're valuing it at 1 CR and he's giving 20L, so you just give him 20% of the, how you would do it in a private limited.
How would you segregate that? Do you have can you break it up, the shareholding into equity shares? You cannot do that. Another thing is that your shareholding in a partnership firm or an LLP will keep changing every day, every financial year. For example, in an LLP, there are 2 partners and LLP needs some fund. You would just invest that fund, and on that day the capital ratio changes. The ownership changes.
My understanding is that in partnership firms, what is critical is the profit sharing ratio.
That is, but you might have 90-10, but still you do not own that partnership firm, so you are not able to take all the key decisions.
So, no, you are saying that the percentage of stakes is decided on basis of liability, not on the valuation of the company.
No, I'm not. No, in a partnership firm, you cannot have proper shareholding ownership because there is no concept of equity share. So there is a pool of partners' capital. Now it can be anything. Now one part the profit, the investment of one partner can go down, can go up. So you cannot say that this partner, because profit sharing ratio is not the deciding factor who is owning what amount of stake in a LLP or a partnership firm. That is just to share your profit. So there may be situation wherein you have 90-10 profit sharing ratio, but you own nothing in that partnership firm. So when at the time of liquidation of assets, or when there is a call which needs to be taken, don't have any right.
Although the percentage is 90% of the profit.
The percentage is decided based on the quantum of investment partner's capital it has.
Then it keeps changing.
It keeps changing. So, and because of that, no one wants to invest in an LLP, because you cannot retain control in an LLP. and you cannot break up the partner's capital into equity shares. So that's the reason private limited company is most favored for investments, and we have seen people investing in private limited company, but we have not seen an LLP. OPC, obviously, since we have only one shareholder, you cannot have an investment.
In a partnership firm, if one of the partners withdraws, then they can just withdraw the capital, that's it.
No, but then there has to be a mutual, that needs to be guided by the partnership agreement. So there can be a dissolution of the partnership firm. If that happens, then the liquidation will happen. So the objectivity of the founder is very, very important when you decide between whether you should go for a OPC, LLP, private limited, or a sole proprietorship. The second factor which is very important is what is the nature of your business? Is it restricted to your family? Will it be restricted to your family, or is it something wherein you will need people from outside? You want to expand it to different geographies. You want to take it to US, UK market. Those factors will also decide whether you should go for a private limited company or an LLP. For example, again, private limited company will give you the maximum flexibility when you are scaling up your business. You can actually bring in private limited company as a shareholder in another company. So those things can be easily be taken care of by a private limited company. So now I'm open to Q&A on the selection of entity, and then we can move forward.
What is the requirements for private limited company? Minimum requirements for?
So minimum requirement is 2%.
And any documents?
Those are very specific things now. Let me explain you the procedure. So the first procedure is you need to have a DIN number. Every director will need to have a separate DIN number. So for DIN number you need the ID proof and the address proof of the director.
DIN number is director number.
Director identification number. So you need to have the ID proof and address proof of the director. Once you have the DIN number, then you go for a name approval. At the time of name approval, you need to decide in which city or state you want to register. And you need to know what business you will be doing. So that business, name, the state, because each state would have its ROC. For example, West Bengal would have one ROC, even though Maharashtra has two ROCs. Registrar of companies. So you go for a name approval. Once you get the name approval, you have 60 days of window to file MON, AOA and other documents, and then you get the name approval, the incorporation certificate. So the whole process takes around 3 weeks to 4 weeks from DIN to getting your incorporation certificate. Cost, the government cost, cost will totally be dependent on the quantum of paid up capital you want to start with. Normally the minimum paid up capital is 1 lakh rupees. So for 1 lakh rupees, the total cost would be around 16 to 17,000, including professional fees and government fees and everything. So
you said each state has a ROC, right? Supposingly, if I have a private limited company registered in West Bengal ROC, can someone register the same name in, say, Karnataka?
see, what you are asking about is trademark and patent. Last year, Ministry of Corporate Affairs has integrated the trademark thing with name approval, and it's not only about Karnataka ROC, whether Karnataka ROC, you cannot register it anywhere across the globe. But the thing is that there are times wherein the name approval is approved manually. So you might see a situation wherein your not exact name, but name which is very similar, your name might get registered. So what you should do is, prior to registering your private limited company or an LLP or an OPC, you should go and check whether you will get this name as trademark for your nature of business. If you think that you will get it, then only you should go for that name. And after registering your entity, you should also apply for a trademark or copyright or patent, whatever it is.
So that also makes sense to get a trademark as well for your whatever brand.
For the brand, yeah.
In a private limited company, if it is registered in a particular city in a state, now are there any location specific restrictions after that if that business moves to some other state?
See, there are two sets of laws in India. One is state specific, one is central. As per central government, there are no restrictions. Whatever is applicable to West Bengal is applicable to Karnataka also. There are state specific laws. So, there may be a restriction. For example, I don't know what will happen after election, but Delhi government allows FDI in retail.
Yeah.
But West Bengal government doesn't allow. So those kind of restriction would be there, wherein it will totally be dependent on state policies. So if you have a private limited company, you're bringing in funding and you're going into a retail FDI, that will not be allowed in West Bengal but will be allowed in NCT as of now.
That's a very specific example, but in general, are there any specific restrictions?
Like I don't have to go and register again in that state. So
You don't have to. You don't have to. So if you have a private limited company registered anywhere in India, that can have business anywhere in India. And if you want, you can have a branch office or a corporate office there itself. But that need
Again,
not.
do we have to register somewhere that this is my
No.
branch?
ROC has the concept of just one
One
thing,
head office.
that is registered office. That's it.
Can that change? Like can
Registered
that
office can be
change?
changed, but if you are changing from one state to other state, then there is a problem. It's a costly affair, and it's a time-taking process because you are changing from one ROC to other ROC. So there are various clearance, and those things are required to be done. So another thing which is very important, that if you are registering, suppose I have seen people. Initially, they start up in Kolkata and they move to Pune or Bangalore. So their registered office still remains in Kolkata. I mean, it's very difficult to transfer your registered office to Bangalore, and if you do that, it takes at least 3 to 4 months, and it's very costly affair. But then you would take a call to shift from Kolkata to Bangalore only when you can afford Bangalore. So if you can afford Bangalore, you can afford that cost also.
No, but I mean, even if the registered office by name is Calcutta and all the functions are happening from Bangalore, how does it matter?
There is no problem. There is no problem. Your tax jurisdiction, your ROC jurisdiction will still be in Kolkata. So you need to have someone in Kolkata, or you need to have a proper office where can actually notices can be received,
Yeah,
and all those things,
documentations
documents
have to
can be
be-
received and those things.
Then you will have your job.
So
Supposing a business is registered saying Delhi, but all the transactions are in Calcutta. I mean, raw material, etc.
That's fine.
Things are being sold out of Calcutta. Basically, it's just a point of contact for the government. That's it, right?
Yeah.
No, the transactions are not taking place in Delhi at all. So, but you need to put some manufacturing in Calcutta and say export it from Calcutta, or maybe to another city, maybe not Delhi. So, does it matter in terms of?
It doesn't matter. We still, since Kolkata was the financial capital some time back, 60, 70, 80 years back, to still have big MNCs, many Birla companies which are still have registered office in Kolkata, and they have nothing in Kolkata other than the registered office.
So, if supposedly a registered office is in Delhi and I want to have an export license and the products would be exported from Delhi. So, how do I get the license and what is the license? What are the limitations?
See, when you will have an office in Delhi, you will have at least you will have a rental agreement. So at the time of getting a import-export code or IEC or service tax, you need to provide two kind of documents. First is your address proof. So if you can provide address proof which is valid for Delhi, it can be a lease agreement, rental agreement for your company.
Address proof of the registered
No,
office.
so where you want to have this registration?
See, the registered, the example I'm asking is that the registered office is in Delhi, but my manufacturing etc. is in Calcutta.
So you will have an address in Kolkata.
In Calcutta.
You will have a rental agreement in Kolkata. So based on that agreement, you can have your IC in Kolkata also. IC or
So
VAT
it doesn't
CST.
matter whether this address is registered or not.
Doesn't matter. Take example of Myntra or Flipkart. They have just one registered office, but they do business everywhere in India. They have VAT and CST registration, sorry, they have VAT registration in each of the state.
Right, so one has to take that of every state you are doing your business in.
See, when you are into trading of goods, you need to have a VAT number. There are various ways. For example, if you're issuing invoice to your customer, and if you do not have a proper VAT number, your customer will not be able to take credit.